His roar wasn't a question. It was a command that stripped the hall of air. Open up and take it all. Welcome, wild hearts. Tonight, beneath torches and trembling silence, one command changes everything. And before we dive in, a special shout out to Teresa Lee Bridger from Wales, UK. Thank you so much for your beautiful words. Wild hearts like you remind me why I tell these stories, sending love all the way to Wales. Now let's begin. The mating ceremony was meant to be pageantry. Lace and jewels, vows rehearsed and sealed under moonlight. The hall glittered with noble maidens, each polished to perfection, each waiting to be chosen. Amelia was not one of them. She stood at the edge, silent as always, a shadow in a plain gown. She had trained herself to vanish. Chin lowered, hands folded, lips sealed. But the moment she lifted her eyes, even by accident, the world broke. The Alpha King's gaze caught hers. Julian was larger than any man in the chamber, his presence filling the space like a storm. His fur-lined mantle spilled over broad shoulders, and his golden eyes burned with something more dangerous than hunger. When his stare pinned her, she felt stripped bare, though no cloth had been removed. He moved toward her. Boots thundered on stone. Whispers rippled through the hall. Nobles gasping. Charlotte stiffening in fury. Edith hissing sharp warnings into Amelia's ear. But Amelia heard nothing, only the thrum of her pulse. Julian stopped before her. His size dwarfed her, his shadow consuming her. He bent low, so close his breath slid across her skin, warm and rough. And then without a word he touched her. His hand, massive and unyielding, closed over her wrist, dragging it down against his thigh as though to test her trembling. The other brushed her hip, slow, deliberate, until his fingers pressed just enough to part the folds of her gown, subtle to the court, unmistakable to her. Amelia stiffened, every muscle locking, her knees clamped tight, legs clenched together as if her body itself tried to resist the invasion. Her breath hitched, chest rising in panic. Julian's lips curved, not kindly, but like a wolf who scented prey. His voice dropped to a murmur meant for her alone. You think silence protects you, little one. Even your body speaks louder than words. Heat flamed her cheeks. Shame warred with something darker inside her, something that answered his boldness with a pulse she could not tame. She tried to shrink back, to close herself further, but his hand pressed firmer, parting her knees just an inch before she snapped them shut again. A challenge. The king's eyes burned hotter, amber flaring like fire against steel. And then, with deliberate cruelty, he raised his head, his voice booming through the chamber. Open up and take it all. The words crashed like thunder. Gasps split the crowd. Charlotte's cry of outrage rang sharp. Elders shouted in disbelief. But all Amelia could hear was her own heartbeat, battering like wings against a cage. His command wasn't just for the hall. It was for her, raw and undeniable. Tears burned her eyes as she whispered, trembling, You don't even know me. Julian's smile deepened, savage and triumphant. Then I'll learn you, starting now. His grip on her wrist tightened. He dragged her forward, out of shadow, into the circle's firelight. Before the horrified, gasping crowd, the Alpha King dragged Amelia into the center of the hall, her legs trembling, her fate sealed before the eyes of the pack. Wild hearts, if you were Amelia, clenching against the king's touch only to hear his roar before all. Would you resist or surrender? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The next part will burn hotter than this night's fire. The hall had never been louder, outrage spilling like fire. But Amelia could hear none of it. Julian's hand gripped her wrist like iron, dragging her forward until she stood in the circle center. Every torch seemed to aim its flame at her, every eye tearing into her skin. Charlotte hissed, her voice sharp as glass. An Omega, you shame the crown. The elders slammed their staffs, demanding the king release her. Edith's voice cut from the shadows. She's worthless. Send her back. But Julian ignored them all. His golden eyes devoured Amelia as though no one else existed. His voice thundered, "If they doubt me, let them watch. If they defy me, let them burn. You are mine." Amelia's knees weakened. For years her silence had been her armor, her obedience her only survival. But now, dragged into the center, the king's heat burning into her, her voice clawed up her throat, breaking years of chains. Her lips trembled, her whisper fierce enough to slice the air. "I will not be your spectacle." The chamber fell still. It was the first sound she had made in years. And it was not meekness. It was defiance. Julian's eyes narrowed, hunger twisting into something darker. Slowly, deliberately, he closed the distance, his towering frame shadowing hers. His hand slid from her wrist to her jaw, tilting her chin up so she couldn't look away. "Not my spectacle," he murmured, voice rough. "My fire, my undoing." Her chest heaved, breath shallow. Why him? Why now? Fear tangled with something she despised, something low and molten awakening under his stare. He lowered his mouth to her ear, his words meant for her alone. "You think silence can save you from me? No, dear little Omega. Now I'll learn you inch by inch, breath by breath, until nothing of you is hidden from me." Her body betrayed her. A shiver raced down her spine, knees threatening to buckle. Still, she forced her lips to move. "I will not open for you." For the first time, Julian laughed. It was low, dangerous, and devastating. His thumb brushed the corner of her mouth. Slow, deliberate. "Then I'll break through every wall you build, and when you fall open, you will beg me to never stop." The hall roared in protest, but Julian did not look away from her. His gaze pinned her, his words meant to, scorch deeper than any elder's decree. "You have until dawn. By then, you will lie in my bed, and when you do, you will never close yourself to me again." Gasps tore through the chamber as King Julian's vow thundered. Before the first light of dawn, the silent Omega would be his. The chamber door slammed behind her, the echo ricocheting like a verdict. Amelia's breath caught. She stood pressed against the cold stone, her palms damp against the wall, her body trembling from the king's unyielding grip. Torchlight flared across the furs and banners of the royal chamber, shadows licking the walls like hungry mouths. Julian stepped closer, his presence filling the room, vast and suffocating. His amber gaze burned with the vow he had made before the pack. "I said dawn, little one." His voice was low, dark velvet over steel. "But I have no patience for waiting." He braced one arm against the wall beside her head, the other resting lightly, dangerously at her waist, not crushing, not forcing, but caging her utterly. His body, a living prison. She could feel the heat rolling off him, the brush of his breath against her cheek. Amelia's pulse hammered. She wanted to move, to push him back, to scream, yet her body betrayed her with stillness, frozen not in fear alone, but in something sharper, something that pulled her closer, even as her mind cried no. Julian leaned nearer, his lips grazing her ear. "Do you want me to stop?" Her throat locked. The question struck harder than any command. He pulled back just enough for her to see his eyes blazing, unflinching. "Say it. Tell me no, and I will stop. Tell me yes, and you will never be the same." His words vibrated through her bones. His restraint was worse than force, because it left the choice burning in her hands. Her silence became unbearable, screaming louder than any word. Amelia clenched her fists against the stone, fighting for air. Images flickered in her mind. Edith's sneer, Charlotte's scorn, her stepbrother's blows, her father's cold eyes. All of them had used her silence as proof of weakness. But Julian, he treated her silence like fire. His thumb brushed her jaw, slow, reverent. "I will not take what you do not give." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her chest ached with the war inside her. Fear, desire, rage, need. Julian pressed closer, the hard planes of his body barely grazing hers, the heat of him sinking into her skin. His voice dropped into a growl, softer than a whisper, but heavier than a roar. "Do not mistake me, Amelia. I hunger for you, but your surrender is the only feast I crave." Her knees threatened to give. Her silence trembled. No longer protection, but prison. And then slowly, with a hand that shook despite herself, she reached out. Her fingers brushed his chest, over the thundering heart that had threatened kingdoms. She felt the heat of his skin through his shirt, the steel of his muscles, the danger of his stillness. Her silence spoke louder than words. Julian stilled, eyes blazing as Amelia's hand remained pressed to his chest. Her silence had become consent, and nothing between them would ever be the same. Her hand trembled against his chest, but she did not pull away. Julian's heart thundered beneath her palm, a wild drumbeat that matched the chaos in her own veins. For a moment, the world stood still. The torches, the silence, the weight of centuries of law. And then he moved. The king lowered his head. His mouth found hers in a kiss that was not gentle, but consuming. Amelia gasped, the sound breaking years of silence, and his lips devoured it like wine. His hand slid up her spine, pressing her closer until her body was pinned between the stone wall and the heat of him. Every kiss dragged something from her. Confessions she had never spoken, secrets she had buried beneath fear. Her lips parted for him, and with each breath she surrendered more. Her mind screamed you should resist, but her body melted, fire replacing the ice of her years in chains. Julian groaned against her mouth, a sound of hunger barely caged. "Do you feel that?" he whispered against her lips, rough and low. "Every wall you built, I will burn them. Every scar they left, I will worship them." Her nails curled into his shirt, clinging as if she might fall apart without him. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, until her knees buckled. He caught her easily, one arm sweeping beneath her, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Amelia gasped as her feet left the ground, the heat of his body carrying her to the bed draped in wolf pelts. He laid her down as though offering sacrifice, yet his eyes betrayed reverence. Hovering above her, he traced her jaw with his thumb, then her throat, down to the hollow trembling with each breath. His gaze devoured her, but his voice was raw, unshaken. "Not my pawn," he whispered, the words a vow as much as confession. His lips brushed her collarbone. "My equal." His mouth moved lower, heat trailing against her skin. "My ruin." Amelia shuddered. The words struck deeper than his touch because she felt them echo inside her bones. For once, she was not an object of scorn or pity. She was fire. She was undoing. Her thighs trembled beneath him, instinct clashing with need. When she tried to clench shut, his hand slid firm against her hip, steady, commanding without cruelty. "Don't hide from me," he growled softly. "I will never take what you do not give. But if you give yourself now, Amelia, I swear I will make them all regret every day they kept you silent." Her breath broke. The tears that slipped free were not of fear, but release. She arched toward him, lips parting with a whisper that was not a word, but surrender itself. Their bodies met in fire. His heat engulfed her, his strength caging her, his mouth claiming every gasp she made as if it were treasure. She tasted power in her own submission, because this time it was hers to give. Every touch from him was both conquest and worship. Every kiss, another confession, another truth, dragged out of her silence. The more she yielded, the more she felt something she had never known. Control. Julian pressed his forehead to hers as he moved against her, his voice ragged. "They told me a king bows to no one. But here I am, undone by an Omega's touch." Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, the fire between them consuming reason, law, and fear. She whispered, her voice cracked and trembling, but alive, "Then burn with me." The chamber seemed to tremble with the force of their union. In that moment, she was no pawn, no cast-off shadow, but queen of his ruin. And then the doors burst open. Elders stormed in, their staffs slamming against the stone. Gasps filled the air, faces twisted with fury. "Release her," one bellowed, "or be exiled from your throne." Julian lifted his head, his chest heaving, his body still caging Amelia as she clung to him. His eyes blazed with a savage promise, daring the elders to tear her from him. The chamber reeked of smoke and fury. Elders poured through the doors, staffs slamming against the stone, their voices thunderous. "Release her," one cried, face purple with rage. "This is against the law, and Omega cannot be claimed so." Another jabbed his staff toward the bed, toward Amelia trembling beneath the furs. "You shame the crown. Exile will be the price of your rebellion, Julian." Amelia's breath caught. Her body still burned from the fire of his touch, but shame licked at her skin like a brand. Before the elders, before the kingdom, she felt bared, exposed, a scandal given flesh. She tried to shrink into the pelts, but Julian rose above her, massive frame blocking her from their gaze. His chest heaved, the heat of his fury making the torches gutter. When he spoke, his voice was a roar that cracked the chamber's air. "You cannot dictate who I claim." The elders froze. Julian's gaze swept the room, golden and merciless. "She is mine, not because she is weak, not because she is silent, but because I will burn kingdoms for her." His words echoed like thunder, rattling the glass panes, silencing every protest. Amelia's heart slammed against her ribs. Fear clawed through her, yet so did life. His vow shook her to her core, terrifying in its savagery, intoxicating in its devotion. But the elders did not yield. One sneered. "You forget yourself, king. The crown is older than you. The council is older still. Step away from the girl, or you will be stripped of throne and title." Julian moved before the words had finished leaving his mouth. With a snarl, he wrenched the elder's staff from his hand and snapped it in two, like dry wood. Gasps broke through the chamber as shards clattered to the floor. He seized another by the collar, dragging him to his knees before the entire assembly. "You dare threaten me in my own chamber?" His voice dripped venom. "Let the pack see what happens when loyalty dies." He backhanded the elder across the face, the sound sharp as a whip crack. The man crumpled to the floor, blood spilling from his lip. The others stumbled back, fear breaking through their outrage. Julian stood tall, breathing hard, his voice carrying like fire over the stunned assembly. "Mark me well, elders. Your power ends where my mate begins. She is mine by tooth, by blood, by fire." Amelia trembled behind him, her fingers clutching the pelts. Terror fought with something hotter, something that lifted her chin even as her body shook. "Mine." He called me his before them all. Julian turned to her, his eyes softening only for her. For a heartbeat, the world shrank until it was just them, the trembling Omega and the raging king. "No crown, no council, no law will strip you from me." His words were a vow etched in steel. Her lips parted, her voice a broken whisper she hadn't known she carried. "Why me?" Julian's hand rose, brushing her cheek with startling reverence. "Because you looked at me when all others bowed. Because you did not see a king. You saw a man. And now that you have seen me, I cannot let you go." The chamber held its breath. Even the elders, bruised and silent, dared not interrupt. But then a sound shattered the moment. Glass splintered. A hiss split the air. Julian's head snapped up just as an arrow whistled through the high window, slicing toward the bed. Amelia screamed. The arrow hissed through the chamber like a serpent. Julian moved in a blur of muscle and fury, his roar shaking the walls as he threw himself before Amelia. The shaft struck with a sickening thud. Blood sprayed across the furs. The Alpha King staggered but did not fall, his broad chest heaving as the arrow jutted from his side. "Julian." Amelia's scream ripped from her throat, raw, the first sound that was not whisper, but fire. She scrambled to him, her small hands clutching at the wound, crimson soaking her fingers. The world spun with chaos. Guards shouting, elders scattering, Charlotte shrieking in rage. But Amelia saw only him. His golden eyes dimmed with pain, but even then, they burned for her. "Stay back," he growled through clenched teeth. "No." Her voice cracked, but it did not falter. "You cannot die. You don't have my permission." The chamber stilled. For the first time Amelia's voice carried, fierce enough to silence even the elders. Julian's lips parted, breath shuddering. A laugh, broken and ragged, escaped him despite the blood staining his teeth. "My Omega gives me orders now." Her tears fell hot, streaking her cheeks, mixing with the blood on her hands. She pressed harder against the wound, trembling. "I will not let them take you. Not them, not death. You hear me? You are not allowed to die." Julian gripped her wrist, even as his strength faltered, his touch scorching. His gaze devoured her with a hunger more dangerous than pain. "Do you see it now? Even bleeding, I am stronger for you." His massive frame bent, pressing closer, his breath hot against her lips, though his body trembled with loss of blood. Amelia gasped, overwhelmed by the proximity, the mingling of desire and fear that made her pulse thunder. "Julian!" He silenced her with his mouth. The kiss was brutal, desperate, blood tangling with heat, copper staining her lips. She gasped against him, but he only pulled her closer, as if he could live through the kiss alone. Her fingers curled into his hair, dragging him nearer, despite the blood soaking her palms. His lips moved against hers, with feverish hunger, claiming her not gently, but like a man who had stared into death and chosen her as his only salvation. When he broke away, their foreheads pressed together, their breaths ragged, his words torn from him in a hoarse growl. "Then I'll live to take you again." His vow seared the air, blood on his lips, hunger in his eyes. The king might bleed, but desire bound him tighter than any wound. The chamber reeked of blood and smoke. Julian lay slumped against the bed's furs, his chest still heaving. The arrow wound bandaged hastily by trembling healers. His golden eyes never left Amelia's face, even as pain stole his breath. She hadn't left his side. Every heartbeat of his became her prayer, every rise of his chest a victory. But outside the chamber, the whispers grew. By dawn, the Pax Beaters had gathered in the courtyard, their voices loud, cruel, unafraid of walls carrying sound. "An Omega," one scoffed. "He's lost his mind. A king's mate should be silk and steel, not silence and scars." Another laughed. "She'll bear no heirs. She'll be his ruin." Their words cut through Amelia like blades. For years, she had survived by shrinking smaller, by making her silence a shield. Her stepmother's scorn, her stepbrother's cruelty. She had endured it all by never answering. But now they mocked not only her, but the king who bled for her. Her pulse thundered. She rose from Julian's side, hands trembling, but her spine straightening. She walked into the courtyard, the morning sun setting fire to her dark hair, her plain gown fluttering in the cold wind. The Beaters turned, sneering. "Ah, the king's whore arrives." Amelia's chest burned, shame twisting like a knife. But she did not bow. She did not lower her gaze. For the first time she met their eyes. Her voice, though trembling, cut through the air. "Do you mock your king's choice, or me?" The courtyard stilled. Her words rang louder than steel on stone, every syllable slicing into the silence. The Beaters shifted, their sneers faltering. Amelia stepped closer, her small frame trembling, yet her eyes fierce with something new, something alive. "Either way," she said, fire igniting in her throat, "you will regret it." Gasps rippled among the crowd. Some Beaters barked laughter to mask their unease. Others muttered, their bravado faltering before the Omega's sudden blaze. But Amelia was not finished. Her heart pounded, but she lifted her chin higher. All of you see only weakness in me. But he, her voice broke, then steadied. He saw what you cannot, and because of it, he bled. Because of it, he still breathes. Her fists clenched. Mock me if you wish. But know this, every word you spit against me spits against your king, and when he rises, he will remember. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was fear. One Beta muttered, his voice uncertain. The girl has fire after all. The others shifted uneasily, their mockery dissolving like smoke. Amelia's chest heaved, her legs trembled, but she stood tall, refusing to let the fear drag her back into shadows. From behind her, a low sound rumbled. A growl. Amelia turned. Julian stood in the archway, bandaged but unbroken, his golden eyes locked on her. Not with anger, not with fury, but with hunger. Not the hunger of flesh alone, though that burned bright, but hunger for her fire, her defiance, the flame she had just bared before his pack. His lips curved, slow and dangerous. "My Omega," he murmured, low enough only she could hear. "At last, the world sees you." Amelia's heart raced as Julian's gaze devoured her, hunger in his eyes, not just for her body, but for her fire. Julian's golden eyes still burned as the courtyard scattered, Betas silenced by Amelia's fire. He did not dismiss them. He did not punish them. Instead, he walked toward her. Slow, deliberate, every step a claim. The bandage at his side was fresh with crimson, but his stride never faltered. Amelia stood frozen, breath shuddering, until his hand caught hers. The world watched, but Julian didn't care. He led her back inside, through torch-lit halls and heavy doors, into the chamber where blood, fire, and desire still lingered from nights before. When the door closed, his grip did not release her. His voice rumbled low, husky with command and something more dangerous. You defied them. You burned them with words sharper than steel. And now his gaze pinned her. Now you will learn what it means to burn me. Amelia's lips parted, but no words came. Julian stepped closer, caging her between the bedposts, his sighs devouring her. Yet instead of claiming her outright, he stilled, his breath heavy against her ear. "I do not want only your surrender, Amelia." His hand slid up her arm, across her collarbone, to cup her throat with a reverence that made her knees quake. "I want your command." Her chest heaved. Command him. The king. The thought twisted her insides with fear and a strange thrill. "I don't," she whispered, voice breaking. "I don't know how." Julian's lips brushed her jaw, molten heat. "Then I'll teach you." He pressed her back onto the bed, not roughly, but with devastating certainty. His massive frame hovered over her, eyes burning down. "Tell me what you want." Amelia shook her head, trembling. Words tangled in her throat. Julian lowered himself, lips grazing her throat, his tongue tasting the frantic pulse there. She gasped, arching despite herself. His mouth curved. "Even silence commands me. You don't know your own power." He dragged his mouth lower, across the line of her collarbone, over the swell of her chest. Each kiss was both worship and challenge, pulling sounds from her she had never dared release. Her hands clenched the furs beneath her. Shame battled with need, but her body betrayed her, rising to his every touch. Julian's voice growled against her skin. "Mark me." Her eyes widened. "What?" He lifted his head, golden fire searing into hers. "Mark me, Amelia, not as king, not as alpha, as yours." Her breath caught. Mine. Her hands shook as they lifted, fingers brushing his chest where scars of battle cut across muscle. He caught her wrist, pressing it harder against his skin. "Do it," he demanded. "Leave your mark, so when I go to war, when I face death, I will carry you carved into me." Her lips trembled. She lowered her mouth, pressing a kiss to his chest. Soft at first, then fiercer, until her teeth grazed his skin and he groaned, his hand fisting in her hair. Yes, he growled, voice rough. Again. Her tongue traced heat against his skin. Her teeth nipped harder, leaving a mark just above his heart. When she pulled back, Julian's chest heaved, his eyes wild with hunger and something softer, devotion disguised as ruin. He surged upward, claiming her mouth in a kiss that stole her breath. Fire and surrender and power tangled together. Their bodies battled and worshipped, the bed creaking beneath their weight. Every touch a war between dominance and devotion. He demanded, she resisted. She demanded, he yielded, until neither could tell who led and who followed. Amelia gasped beneath him, her hair spilling like dark silk across the furs, her body trembling, but her voice fierce. "If you kneel," she whispered, the words trembling with daring, "they'll know you're mine." The world stilled. Julian's golden eyes burned hotter than flame. His chest heaved once, twice, and then slowly, deliberately, he pushed back from the bed. He sank to his knees before her, a king brought low before his Omega.